Can you buy a liger? Do people buy them, or do you just like discover them in nature? You're like, holy crap, there's a liger in nature.
I don't know enough about them to answer that question.
Yeah, same.
These are all like trajectories of research that we must follow in subsequent summers.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm joined by. We're going to get to the real part of the podcast.
Okay.
I don't have a set of conversation topics. I figure we can kind of just riff on some things and hopefully be done before Anna has to get on the road and peel out of here.
Yeah.
Maybe we can start by each of you introducing yourselves to our dozens and dozens of YouTube followers.
Cool. Okay, I'm Maddie. I study in New York at Pratt Institute, and before Pratt, I'm doing my master's in architecture, and before Pratt, I did my undergrad in civil engineering in India, and then decided to do architecture.
What do you think of Omaha, Nebraska in comparison to Brooklyn?
Okay. I like the city. I really like the pockets of neighborhoods that's there. But I don't like from the point of not being walkable or the public transportation. And
well, you can walk it.
Yeah,
take
sure.
a really long time. Yeah, the density is not here. But what's interesting is that you had not been to the Midwest before.
Oh yeah, no.
So your exposure, you've been to the West Coast though.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. California.
You've been to California, Los Angeles?
No, SF.
Oh, San Francisco.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So you've visited San Francisco, you've been to Brooklyn, and then there's this whole vast middle area
Yeah.
that people like myself and the rest of Proving Ground exist.
Yeah.
Which is like, I would say that, you have the kind of big city life on the coast, which is in some ways and Chicago, I would say, it's kind of like the big American city. It's in cinema. It's in, it's very much ingrained as like the vision of, what you kind of expect America to be like. But then you have the vast majority of the rest of the country is kind of a little bit more like Omaha, Nebraska.
Actual America.
Sort of spread out. I remember a colleague of mine, good friend, Daniel Davis, came out here. We were doing a strategy in Des Moines, but he flew into Omaha, and we did our 2-hour road trip to Des Moines, Iowa. And he's from New Zealand, and obviously he spent a lot of time at RMIT at Melbourne. And he was just kind of fascinated by the drive to Des Moines. It's like the McDonald's and the gas station exit, and the sort of stretch of road that just keeps going on. And he's just like, this is America. As opposed to Brooklyn, which is,
Yeah, I definitely got the taste over the summer.
I remember like early on in the summer, we were like, Kristen was talking about how she had to travel south to some part of Nebraska, and which is like a couple hours away from Lincoln.
Okay.
And you were kind of like, what is like? So yeah, you get locals talking about the geography of the area.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, what she just described is kind of like if you had to go to Queens to pick up a friend and then go to upstate New York within the span of sort of puts it all in perspective.
Yeah.
Right? And then we have Anna, this is her last day, by the way. Yeah. And by the time this podcast gets released, this will, it'll probably be your last day too. So by the time I get around to editing. So tell us a little about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Anna. I'm starting next semester. I'll be starting my last year at Iowa State University, studying architecture. Yeah.
And you're originally from Chicago.
Yeah. The Chicago area. Yeah.
Big Cubs fan.
And Centaur fan.
And
apparently.
and very interested in centaurs. Wish I would have known this in the interview. So you've now spent 2 months at Proving Ground, working away on different things. The first month was focused on getting to know some of our technology and building some documentation, which we just released to our clients on conveyor and semantics. So I kind of got a crash course in some of those tools and kind of the nuances of different data-based workflows. And then you've spent the last month digging into Raspberry Pis and Arduinos, which I thought was just fascinating to watch. As I've not used any Raspberry Pis before, and so this was like a big summer experiment. It's like we looked at some of the blind spots at Proving Ground, things that we've been interested in, and we haven't quite kind of gotten into and exploring in full detail. I've always been interested in like figuring out where can Raspberry Pis kind of exist in the kind of conversation about computation and data. I've used Arduinos a little bit before as part of like Firefly experiments with Grasshopper, but never really did too much with them. And, a good friend of mine, Andy Payne, wrote Firefly. And, I remember back in the case days, we did like a company workshop where we looked at that. But really trying to figure out how these things could get positioned in a meaningful way. And Steve Trigby and I just had this conversation about, data collection in the space of architecture, and both the opportunities, but also the challenges and dangers, quite frankly, of like mass data collection and surveillance of people, right? And so the whole concept of kind of really getting into understanding, okay, well, how does one really set up a sensor? And how can we start to actually collect data about the built environment was kind of the theme of the last month. And we all kind of came in cold to this. I think you came in, both of you came in really cold because you didn't have coding experience, which I thought was like kind of another one thing. And so you're all of a sudden wrangling Python scripts and Arduino scripts. And you're also doing command lines via Raspbian in Raspberry Pi, which I thought was really cool to kind of see you guys start to struggle with it. Do you guys have any reflections on that whole process? What it was like to kind of get into this kind of unknown territory and start working with essentially a new operating system and kind of coding environment?
Yeah. I remember like first day. When like we loaded Raspberry Pi, and then we were trying to download Arduino sketchbook, and we're like looking for the download button or like load, just like downloading the app, and then like realizing, oh, it all runs in command line. Yeah. Like, where's the interface for this? Right. And then, okay, there it is. That was, super eye-opener.
I had never heard of Raspberry Pi or Arduino before coming here, and you guys started talking about it, and I looked it up and didn't really understand what it could do and what the difference between the two were. But I mean, that first day when you brought in all the supplies, it was just so exciting. We were all kind of riding a high for a bit when it was getting set up, and we have our work table now of electronics, and it's cool to look back on a month ago having no idea to like you said, now running command lines and making it read stuff and do stuff. Well,
that's what's exciting about it to me is like we didn't have really much experience collectively as a company in this space, and kind of trying to figure out, we can maybe start to use like the summer research as an opportunity to get into this, because it is an important conversation. And to me, the thing that's exciting is being able to connect real world data in with a lot of the other workflows that we've been building. And the idea that we, was like Christmas that day. We just ended up getting this package with all of these like sensors, and all of a sudden, like with within a week, there was like a stream of data happening to a database, and we're immediately connecting physical to digital just by sensing and kind of collecting some information. And I think my takeaway, and I hope it's a takeaway for folks that we end up sharing all of this information with. That's one of the things we'll be doing, is like taking all of the experiments that you've been doing and putting it out there to the community. The takeaway for me is that, as challenging and maybe, initially as it may seem, you're dealing with command lines and Python script. It was actually pretty easy at the end of the day, relatively speaking. Like within a week, you had a do-it-yourself sensor.
Yeah.
Oh yes, definitely. Just knowing the pattern, and like once you realize everything runs in that, and just making up your mind going forward. That was the big part.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time right at the beginning basically just playing with different sensors and seeing what they could do and how they projected data and the way it read, which came originally from the Arduino script, but then you could reformat it in Python to read it a different way. So there was a lot of just experimentation with that.
But you don't see like that's always one of the, if I take this back to like the core of our business, which a lot of it deals with strategy and working with architecture firms to figure out how they can position new technologies. I think one of the things that a lot of firms are missing today is that experimentation and kind of taking a bit of a risk. We had no idea if any of this stuff would pay off at the end of the day. We knew that, we could kind of calculate the cost of obviously your time and like the time of or the amount that a sensor, sensor kit and Arduino kit and Raspberry Pi kit costs. But at the same time, you're like, in order to kind of figure out how to really position this, it required a bit of risk and being able to say like, okay, well, let's try this thing out and see if it works. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. And, we tried a little bit with TensorFlow for like a week, and that kind of, fell on its face. And then we tried OpenCV and it worked. And now you found that you actually got TensorFlow to work after like, 3 or 4 weeks. And so there's this like this iteration that occurs to really kind of, try to get these pieces to stick together. You think you'll use any of this in your like studio work or future work? Is this something that you might build on?
Yeah. Arduino's definitely studios, and like especially with like OpenCV and TensorFlow robotics, and like I'm just like excited to see how that can be implemented, or just to experiment more. Because
you both have done a little work with robotics, right, in school.
Yes.
I know that Iowa State has a great lab, and Pratt's got a great lab too. And so there's this kind of growing space of like digital fabrication and kind of building things in architecture school. And do you think that is any of this kind of being done in either of your curriculums? I mean, is there like any space where like uses of even Firefly are being kind of exploited? Or
yeah, I can't say for Firefly, but Iowa State offers a class on Arduino drawing. So you build a little car that you attach your Arduino to, and then have a pen or marker attached to that, and it rotates or draws out whatever you program it to. So yeah,
that's awesome. We don't have a specific class or anything that way, but not much actually. Even the Firefly Grasshopper applications, not really. Maybe somebody interested might have done it, but not a school.
It always seems to me that a lot of schools are very, you might have classes that are more computation focused, studios that are a little bit more computation focused, but a lot of the work does that I've been observing seems self-directed in some ways. Like, you know, if a student figures out something interesting, they tend to pursue it. But do you have any, like, you know, given what you've learned this summer, are there any reflections that you have on, like, you know, the state of academia and like your kind of architectural upbringing to date? Do you feel like architecture education today is hitting the mark with technology, a little behind, needs to be farther ahead? Is there without throwing anyone under the bus, of course, you know, but you know, what's your impression? You know, you're going to be going back to school here soon.
Yeah, I can only speak for Iowa State. It's the only place I've studied at, but I think that it could be pushed a bit further. The facilities for design, computation, and fabrication at Iowa State are fantastic. But I only know of 2 professors that really pursue it. And I think that there's such a diversity and variety of things that could be done with the type of work that's done here, what we've done this summer. And I think it'd be really fascinating to see what a group of students could make of that in school.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. Again, like, the facilities are great, but when it comes to computation design and just like coding, Internet of Things, I feel like that's a bit like lagging in a way. Like, we do have a lot of classes which we try and do it, like, so Grasshopper, like, just using them, it's always like a scary thing to do. And even like coding, I can, like, the summer using it, now I'm like, I've realized, like, I don't have to write anything from the scratch. It's just like troubleshooting or like understanding and see what's not working. So like those small things will like break that barrier, and then you can move forward. So like if there was like a basic introductory class, more on coding, like technology, that I guess we can embrace more along with the design part.
Yeah. And I do think it's worth knowing, because it can open so many doors, you know, in the field, that if it's not an interest to an individual, it's still worth checking out.
So my next question, which I don't think I asked in maybe I did ask it in, like, when we were kind of interviewing for applicants, but it'd be kind of good. I always ask this of anyone that's like a guest in this format. Why architecture? Like, what was it about architecture that you were like, you know, you went from civil engineering to architecture and you went right into architecture school? What drove that decision? What made you interested in designing buildings?
I think for me, it was the complication of it. There's so much that the naked eye doesn't see, and that if you haven't had training, you would never think about, like, what's inside of a wall. You'd never think about that. And that really fascinated me. And since being in the program, I've discovered I'm interested in so many other aspects of it, and all the different branches of it you can follow. So I like that it opens doors to so many different things.
What was like the most eye-opening thing? You said you kind of you've shifted your attention to certain things that you didn't think you'd be interested in initially. What was the what's like one of those things where you're like, I never thought about it this way, and now I want to learn more about this one thing?
I designed a stage for a fashion show, actually, for Patagonia. They came to my campus, and they're an outdoors brand. And it was just a different type of design, and I used everything I've learned in architecture school in designing that. And that was just amazing. I loved it.
What about you? What made you get into architecture?
So when I did civil engineering, I wanted to do electronics and communication at first, and then my sister and my brother-in-law, like literally 10 days before school, they were like, it's not going to work, because they had done that. They were like, you're just going to go to computer science at the end. You'll end up doing that. I was like, computer science is the last thing I want to be doing. Like, coding is the last thing. So. And
yet you spent the summer with Proving Ground doing exactly
me,
that.
Like 6 years before. And I was like, okay, I do civil engineering. Because like the way in India, how it works is you need to take like exams before. It's not just like you go to college and then you pick what you want. So I was like, okay, I'll do civil engineering. And then I did a summer program at Harvard, which was like midway in my undergrad. And then I realized the difference between engineering and architecture, which is getting a little liberty of creating and then making those design decisions, which I was like more interested in. So I was like, okay, I'll do my master's in architecture. And doing my master's, I realized like the technology side of it, which might be my stronghold or like my interests. And then robotics was like an add-in to both. So like that has made me realize, okay, I need to learn like coding can be fun, like programming can be fun as well, with the combination of all the other things. So
that's interesting. Like that's really interesting. Like thinking back to my own experience getting into coding and technology in general. I've always liked technology, but I flunked my first coding class. I didn't get it. I didn't understand what it was for, I guess initially. And this was like in high school, when I was, just taking different electives that sounded interesting. And I never really touched it outside of like, modeling and animation during, school, undergrad and graduate school. I didn't really return to this idea of coding until I was practicing and I found this like application to the work. And once I had made that connection that, I can be creative with this and I can really use this to drive design in some way, then I got excited about it. And, I think tools like Grasshopper have a lot to do with that as well. Kind of the light bulb goes off in people's heads. Like when you look at a script versus, now with Grasshopper, it starts to introduce a fun factor and a creative factor that, may not have been immediately obvious. And now we're seeing this. I think a lot of people are experiencing what you're experiencing in that front.
Oh yes, definitely, yeah. Even with the transition of like learning Grasshopper was like, it's like the stages. You learn Rhino, which is like intimidating at the beginning, and then you're like you keep looking at Grasshopper and you're like, I don't know how I can do that. And then there's like, okay, I want to like do like Python more, like do those like small snippets and and then like slowly you're just like stepping, like look back, like, okay, it wasn't that bad. And it's like fun, so that's nice.
Right. What about you? How have you like found the whole computation thing? Because you've learned, I think, quite a bit this summer, and that you've dabbled in before in advance. Like, do you find it accessible? Do you find it is there a fun factor there for you too?
Definitely. It takes some time to learn, but I think in the long run, it's so efficient as a design tool. But yeah, it took a long time to learn, and same as Maddie was saying, I remember the days when I decided I would never be able to learn Rhino. And I felt that with Revit this summer, definitely. But it, absolutely worth it.
The dirty secret is that no one knows how to use Revit.
Yeah.
No one wants to admit it, but right. It's true. We've seen enough models to know that that's the case.
That's where Proving Grounds comes in.
I don't know how to use Revit. I know how to use the Revit API, and that's like, that will make you dislike coding again. Like,
okay. Good to know.
Stay away from that. Number one recommendation.
All right.
I say these things and I think, boy, should I Should I edit that out? Will that be good for business? I don't know. Probably not good for business, but yeah, I'll say it. I'll say it. People like our brutal honesty. I think that's what brings people to us.
It's relatable for everyone else out there that doesn't know Revit.
Right. So, what do you think you'll be doing after school? Do you have an inclination of where you want to go? What your where your professional path might take you? Is there a...
Right now, I don't know, honestly. I think of something different every day. Most of the time, I think to pursue getting my license just for knowing proficiency in the field. I think that's important. And I'd love to stay towards the more digital side of things, like a BIM manager, maybe. But I can't say for certain right now, honestly.
Yeah. You think you'll stay in Chicago? Are you thinking about other cities, or is it kind of really open-ended? Like you'll go wherever the opportunity is? It's
mostly open-ended. I'd love to stay in Chicago just because it's beautiful and full of opportunity and such a great location for this. But I'm happy to go anywhere.
Cool. What about you? What do you think you'll do when you have one more year of grad school or two more?
One more.
One more. Yeah. So
I'm done with 2 years.
You're both like done in 1 year.
Yeah.
It's got to be a pretty good. That's when the senioritis starts to creep in. You're like, I've only got a year left. I can make it. Like you don't want to slow down. You really have to fight it. Although that last semester, if I remember right, was really hard. I got to like February and I was like, I think I can ride this wave. I think I can do it.
Yeah.
Just got to make sure I made it this far. I think I can do it.
The good thing with Pratt grad school is we don't do thesis, so it's just going to be a regular semester. So I'm thinking it'll be a breeze.
Yeah, so talk about that. So they don't do does Iowa State do like a thesis type of thing in the last year, or is it just studios?
Just studio.
Yeah. Is there like an option at Pratt or anything to do a thesis, or is it like, it's just, is that just the nature of the program now?
Yeah, there's no option to do thesis, but it's more research based.
I see.
So we have studio of experiments.
So it's kind of like a curated thesis. Like there's a theme to the studio, and you're as a group, you're doing investigations in that space.
Oh yes, definitely. Yeah. We're not going to be doing group project, but individually, yes, it's going to be more research oriented.
Yeah. Cool. Do you know what you're going to be researching in the last year, or is it?
No, I think it will depend on like which studio I'll get into, which over then.
Are you taking any more courses with Brian Ringley?
No, I don't think so. But because he doesn't offer any electives.
Brian Ringley doesn't offer electives.
No, not for like MArch. He does it for MSArch and others. Hey, just to clear things up.
But I think what I want to talk about a little bit more is how Brian Ringley can better apply himself.
Okay. That's fair. That's clear.
This is my test to see if Brian Ringley watches us. He used to run a podcast called Design-A-Wise. I don't know if you've ever come across his. He did it with Zach Downey, another friend of ours, and it was great. It's sort of very informal conversations, much like what you have here, and they would kind of interview a variety of folks around the industry, and so. This is my test to see if he actually watches and or listens to this one.
Okay.
I know if I put his name in the kind of notes, he'll find it.
Yeah, it'll get to him.
Oh yes, definitely.
I'll be sure to tag him on all of the Twitter announcements too. Right. And it's guaranteed that he's gonna, try to find the spot.
Yeah.
He's the conversation topic.
Oh yes.
So you've also been working on a competition.
Yes.
this summer, like with Brian?
Yeah. It's a competition for this Jewish festival called Sukkot. So they have like a small. So this festival is for a week, and we need to like design a small space for them to like go stay in for that festival. So Pratt's hosting it, and it's been fun, and the deadline's like tomorrow, so it's been fun.
So what you're saying is that this podcast is keeping you from submitting your project with Brian Ringley?
Hey, I'm still working. It's so the perks of working with Brian is like we get to do more like computation, grasshopper based design. So it was like, again, an add-on exercise over the summer to just like keep on working and like explore that part as well.
So those are the perks. What are the downsides to working with Brian? You don't have to answer that.
He's awesome.
Just
yeah.
Don't worry, Ringley.
Staring at the camera.
Just joking, Ringley. You know I love you. All right. Any side projects over the summer that you did?
No.
Just jamming on proving ground stuff.
Yeah. Working on my portfolio.
Yeah.
But
So what's the state like? I feel disconnected from the applying for an architecture job thing. The portfolio is the portfolio still like that's like the driving force.
Yeah, it is the thing.
The thing still.
Yeah.
Are people trying different things with the format? I know that for a while, like Issue was a big kind of way of distributing things digitally. Are you still like printing things out in analog form and bringing it to the interview, or is it much more about telling your story using other means? I've always been interested in how that part's evolved.
For us, it's a bit of both. Mostly Issue, just because most of our applications are online. But everyone will print out their portfolio and have it bound for a career fair. Mm-hmm. They can show it to interviewers, and they can physically, page through it. But I'd say mostly digital.
Yeah, get it around.
Yeah.
Issue has started to introduce ads into people's like publications. I was checking out your portfolio the other day, and I'm like, hey, Anna, there's an ad in the middle of your portfolio now. It's just like it's just all encompassing now. It's like advertising is everywhere, and now people are trying to make a couple of cents off the back of student portfolios that are it's amazing. What about you? Are you primarily sending your stuff out digitally, or are you kind of?
Yes, it is digitally. It's almost the same as Anna said. Like you have a bound copy if you're attending a career fair, or just like if you get called in for an interview. But yeah, I think it's editing out. Like it keeps changing of like what do you want to portray yourself as. So that's usually.
Yeah.
It's like I end up changing it often and being worried about it. Yeah.
It's the career fairs are now I've been on both sides of it. I've done career fairs when I was a student. I have very kind of distinct memories of going in and doing a round of interviews, which always to me felt impersonal. You kind of would go in, you might have like 10 minutes or 20 minutes at most to spend with like a potential employer and sell yourself. And then there was just a line behind you. It always seems like, all right, now it's someone else. And trying to stand out in that type of environment it's pretty hard. And I always kind of would want to get a more, I guess, personal sense of who these people were, and I think what the culture of the office environment was, and I think that's so important. I mean, I've had good jobs. I've also had bad jobs, and the ones that may not have gone so well for me were ones where I maybe perhaps misjudged the culture of the kind of the office that I was joining, and so I guess my piece of advice on that front is like, trying to figure out, what these people are all about, and finding some way to get a personal connection going there, that goes beyond just being a number or a face. But then being on the other side of it, I mean, it's the same kind of thing. I've done, Proving Ground has done maybe 3 career fairs, and it's like you get people one after another, and they all start to blur together.
Yeah.
And they're, UNL does a pretty good one where it's like very much like sit down and interview. I did the Iowa State one a couple of years ago, and that one was weird for me, because what was, we set up our booth. I even like brought that flat screen TV we've got in the back. Like Dave and I like shuttled it to Iowa State and like put it up, and like we had our like digital animations going, and it was like people didn't really know what to do with us. Like we're still trying to figure out like where we stand. I'm like, oh, we could do an architecture career fair because primarily people from architecture school come to work here. But we would be like set up next to OPN Architects. They were like right next door, and they're a Des Moines firm.
Right.
And so you'd see students round the corner, clearly looking for OPN, but they would see us first, and they'd see our animation going of like custom software development and like computational technology and like these vector ray traces and stuff like that. It's kind of like splashy B-roll footage, and you kind of just see them like look at it and then be like, oh, there's OPN, and they like kind of
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
and so it's kind of carving out a space in that front has been kind of an interesting kind of experience for us. And on kind of beyond that, it seems that the best folks that we've gotten, and I think I include the two of you in this, is you reached out directly. It was like kind of on your own initiative, and I looked at your cover letters, and it was clear that you understood what we did, even at a from what you gleaned from our kind of online presence, and you were kind of able to, in my view, tell a story about like, oh, I'm interested in this because, and that to me, I was like, okay, they get it. They understand that we're a very different kind of firm, and that you had kind of a clear objective in some ways of applying. Like, what was your kind of motive? You can explain to the folks out there, like why Proving Ground in your kind of determination of what you wanted to do for a summer, knowing that we were in Omaha, Nebraska.
I had heard about this through Shelby Doyle. She'd advertised it, and it looked interesting, and the work I had done with her has been my favorite in college. And I thought that this was just a great opportunity before joining the professional world, after college. I thought it'd be good to try something different before graduating, basically.
Yeah, I heard about the internship from Robert Cervelloni. And
Robert? I don't know if you watched this yet.
Okay. Yeah, you should tag him.
Shelby's been on the show.
Yeah.
Shelby's been on the show. Where's Robert at? Robert needs to come on the show.
Yeah, so he just I was taking a class from him and Brian. So he mentioned it in the group for everyone. And I knew I wanted like this kind of internship, more like, I didn't know the right terms. It was more like coding and grasshopper-ish internship. So, so I was looking mainly for this. And again, it was intimidating just to like apply to Omaha. But like everything else, and like listening to your talks and like the conference, everything was it was promising and it was exciting. So yeah.
Well, that's good. I mean, it's good to know that we have advocates like Robert and Brian and Shelby kind of talking us up, and hopefully we're providing value back to the folks that come with us, come on for a summer to work with us. I mean, this is now the fourth. I think this is the fourth. So we had. Now I'm going to be testing my memory here.
Okay.
Yeah. You're the fourth graduating class from Proving Ground University. And my hope, and also my pitch is like, I've done internships before where you're just like, you get thrown into the fray and you become someone to help with like construction documents or a rendering. I know friends that worked an entire summer on like 3 renderings, and to me, like internships are an opportunity for both parties, a company and the folks that are coming in. For the folks coming in, you're hopefully learning a lot of new things that will be valuable in the future. And then for the company, it seems like an opportunity, at least the way we're positioning it, is to like figure out something that we don't know yet, or we want to know more about. And, so there are questions on both sides. And hopefully that can be used to really kind of improve, and continuously improve a business culture, and leave everyone with a sense that, hey, we've grown in some way by the end. And I think that's the case here. I feel like I've learned a lot by watching the two of you like figure out and wrestle with command lines, and figure out how do you take OpenCV and get it to recognize and count people in a space and send it to a database. I mean, that's the fact that we got to that point today, like in the last couple of days, is pretty amazing.
Oh yeah. I think just to add on to what you said, like with the internship, we were doing experimental stuff, but we also got to see like what you do, which were like,
What's your biggest takeaway on the business that's been conducted that you've observed without going into like kind of NDA violations of various projects we have on the boards? What's been your biggest like takeaway, just kind of seeing a 5-person company like kind of wrestle with the building industry, I guess?
Yeah.
Just the difference. I mean, it's, I don't know how to explain it. It's just mostly hearing your meetings with other people, or hearing your conversations after those meetings. It's just very different. Comparing the commitment to work here opposed to there. It's just not the same. Not that it's better or worse, but it's just more focused, I'd say.
Yeah. Wrestling, definitely.
Yeah.
That's the right word.
Yes. But also like, so there are like set of softwares, but there are like few essential things that can be done, and the most basic needs. So like looking at that, a group of 5 people can do that, and that's just like, again, like gives more like confidence or something like that, and like super fascinating.
Yeah, I mean we've had a couple of conversations with our clients recently, and prospective clients, especially in the last couple of weeks. The question always comes up. So after we go through the work that we're doing and like the types of things that we're a part of, the question comes up. It's like, oh, like how big is your team? And I'm like, well, it's me plus 4 others. So a total of 5. And they're like, you're doing all of that work with 5 folks. And I think on the one hand, that's like, and 5 plus 2 over the summer, right? So you're when you come on for the summer, you're very much a part of the team, I feel. But the idea that because we have all of this technology, and if you're able to calibrate your culture, in my view, with a degree of openness and transparency and just sort of freedom of communication, and we're kind of layering on these kind of processes of how to improve the way we're doing things and build on what we know works, you can do a lot with less. I think of some of the projects that we've been a part of, and I'm like, wow, if I were still in practice, thinking back to my experience at like a corporate firm, some of the work that we're doing, the tendency would be like, oh, we need to like put 10 more people on this to get it done. But somehow I feel like we're riding this really tight line of like, okay, well, we can do 3 of those projects with 5 people, and if we're able to kind of continue to invest in these capabilities. But you also use the term basic needs, like, I'm sure you've heard, and I know that you've heard us like talk about like just the challenges and the perception of what technology is, and how it's perhaps not a replacement for just having a good kind of fundamental like team structure or way of managing things, or just like the culture of a place in general. It's like been the theme of a lot of my talks as of late, it seems, has been just this idea that we're at a point where technology is technology. It's pervasive, it's everywhere, and it's just going to continue to expand. But it's not a panacea for the things that are really the core foundations of a business, right?
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I can only speak as an intern, but being here, for the summer, I feel like Maddie and I have done actual work and are valued. And I know we have both learned a ton, but same as you said, I have friends who are just rendering all summer. It's not just grunt work here for us. We're actually, learning. And
experimenting.
Yeah, experimenting.
That's troubleshooting.
Right.
Running command lines. Yeah.
Wrestling with Python scripts and pip installs of TensorFlow. And virtual environments that won't let you install MySQL DB. No, I mean, it's like, and that's certainly, I'm thrilled that with that feedback, to be honest. Like, there are like fundamental like changes that I feel are a long time coming in the space of architecture, engineering, and construction in terms of how you like build people up and try to position them to provide value. And there's a lot of there's quite a bit of toxic culture out there in terms of like if I think back to some of my internships where you're working till 1 a.m. on things that
You did?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. For like minimum wage, like that whole like kind of paradigm still exists. And then of course there's still the I think there've been articles that have popped up over the summer about unpaid internships and things like that, and those are very problematic as a way to promote value in the industry. That's fundamentally where all of this stuff leads is, can we provide value, and how do you create a culture that recognizes value across the board, irrespective of experience level, and find out how you can, bring everyone together to solve a problem.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Just, working with Raspberry Pi, like collectively, having those 2 hours call with Steve, like troubleshooting, and then getting your help.
That's amazing too. Like that whole thing, because Steve is in Des Moines, and you had like and it's on Raspberry Pi. We couldn't do conventional screen sharing, so you had a camera pointed at your screen, and then you're set up on a Zoom on your laptop while you're trying to. That's great. That's great. I was thrilled about that whole thing. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Any parting thoughts before we wrap this podcast up?
I mean, it's my last day, so thank you for this summer. It's been amazing.
Well, thank you. I mean, that's at the end of the day, this this goes both ways, and it's been amazing having you on.
Thanks. Thank you.
And hopefully I get around to editing this before Maddie leaves. Otherwise, thank you too, Maddie.
I'll bug you. Make sure you upload it.
Make sure I get it done. I'll try to get it done this weekend. Maybe this will even go up before Shelby's. I've been sitting on Shelby's podcasts now for 2 months.
Oh, wow.
Literally, I remember you saying on our first day, I need to do that. I still need to edit that.
Yeah, that was back in May. We did Shelby's. That was a lot of fun. And it's been in the back of my mind. I gotta get to Shelby's. But yeah, that would be maybe now I'm gonna release yours just now as a joke on Shelby. And I'm gonna keep this in here too.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna flag this timestamp as Nate explains why Shelby's podcast is not yet live.
Okay.
Because that's the other thing. This has been one of the, I think, you kind of got exposure to Proving Ground in probably the busiest summer, and not only busiest summer, but the busiest span of 3 months that we've ever had, which is on the one hand been amazing to see, but on the other hand, previous summers, there have been summers where I never made a business trip. It was we had work on the plate and we were just kind of moving along. But the last couple of months have been, fairly travel heavy for me. And I was like, oh geez, I'm going to Seattle. I'm going to, Southern California. I think there was a trip there. I think where else did I go?
Kansas City.
I went to Kansas City, drove down to Kansas, Chicago, Los Angeles. Yeah. I was kind of everywhere.
Yeah.
And so there's, I mean, I always like to think of these kind of moments over the summer as being, hopefully a push forward for the company. And I can't thank you both enough for being on the team and coming to Omaha, Nebraska to kind of put up with our craziness and our kind of small office.
Yeah, no, this has been great, amazing.
Yeah,
beyond words. Looking back 2 months, the amount of experience and in every way, not just Arduinos or Raspberry Pis, but ethics and everything. So it's been great.
Great. Well, I'm thrilled that you came on, and I'll be looking forward to the rest of your academic career and your future professional career. I'll be looking ahead to that with great interest. So please keep in touch and let us know how things are going.
Yeah,
of course,
definitely.
Tune in next time.